Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. How to make a Leaf Spring Bowie Knife. This project's going to start with a leaf spring of a car, and with basically just a 4.5-inch disc grinder, we're going to transform it into a Bowie knife. The first step in the process is to heat the metal to cherry red to a non-magnetic state, and then let it cool slowly. This is going to anneal the metal and allow it to be soft enough for us to cut and grind. We're going to use a variety of different wheels or attachments for the grinder. We're going to start off with cutting discs, and we're going to use cut out the basic shape of the knife and the handle. And then we're going to move on to grinding discs as well as sanding or flap sanders. Once the metal is annealed, it actually works pretty nicely. It's a little bit softer, and therefore you don't go through quite as many cutting discs. You can note that we can even cut a curve by just working the groove slowly forth. And it doesn't take too long to cut out the entire shape of the knife to the design that you've drawn on the raw material. After the shape is cut out, I'm now going to move to a grinding wheel, and the grinding wheel is used to move a lot of material. We're going to shape the knife or take off the rough edges from the cutting wheels with the grinder. But we're also going to use the grinder to reduce the thickness of the blade and also grind the blade and almost sharpen the blade with the grinder. Of course, whenever you're grinding steel, you should wear safety goggles as well as gloves. That metal gets very hot during the grinding and sanding process. And here you see we're starting to grind down the surface, one side of the blade. And it actually goes pretty quickly. Of course, you want to go back and forth from one side to the other. Make sure that you're grinding equally, and make sure that the edge ends up being centered on the thickness of the material. And while you're working it, even though that blade is going to get very hot, resist the temptation to quench it in oil. That would actually harden the metal again, and you don't want to do that. You want to keep it soft so that it's easier to work. Now, after the blade is cut and shaped as desired, you can switch discs. I like to use the flap sanders, and these come in a variety of different grits. If you start with one of the rougher grits, like a 36 or a 40, it's amazing how much material you can move, and it will also smooth out all of those rough edges created from grinding. By then reducing that sanding disc to a finer grit, you can achieve almost a polish on the knife before we reharden the blade. As much work as you can do before that blade gets rehardened, the better off you will be. And that's going to include drilling the holes through the handle for the pins that are going to hold the handle in place. You want to do all of that before we reharden the material. And again, with the sanding disc, you want to go from one side to the other and make sure that the blade is entirely even on both sides. And once the blade is basically finished, except for final polishing, it's time to go back into the furnace. We're going to reheat it to cherry red to a non-magnetic state. But this time, instead of letting it cool slowly, we're going to quench it quickly in oil. and it's this quick quenching that's going to harden the steel. This will allow this knife to hold an edge, but at this point it will be brittle. We are going to have to take one final step in the heat treating process, which is called tempering. So after the blade comes out of the oil and cools a little bit on its own and gets cleaned off a little bit, we're going to stick it in our kitchen oven, and we're going to heat it up to 375 degrees for 2 to 3 hours, and then let it cool in the oven overnight. This tempering process is going to make that blade non-brittle, so it will still be hard enough to hold an edge, but it won't break on you. The final stage or final step after adding a handle is going to be to polish the blade, and this can just be done with different grits of sandpaper, either by hand or using a sander. And it's as easy as that. A do-it-yourself Leaf Spring Bowie Knife. Now, please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Be sure to check out our other how-to videos, and if you liked this video, please subscribe to this YouTube channel.